Well, hello, my fine friends. Welcome back to Destination Discourse. I'm your host, Stuart Butler, and I am joined today with Adam Stoker, who was once described.
Here we go.
Here you
Are
go,
we going to
what?
finish the sentence? Okay, someone described me once. That's what you're
What
saying.
you were once described.
That's very good. But do you want to hear what I was described as?
Sure.
Handsome, smart,
Mhm. Mhm.
talented, ambitious, handsome,
Wait, this
uh,
this this episode's not going
handsome.
out on April 1st. What is that all about? I totally
We're-
stole that joke, because last week's episode I did an intro saying that I came to regard you as someone I met, which you'd pointed out afterwards that I'd actually done before, which is super embarrassing,
Yes.
but yeah, they won't remember because I certainly didn't remember, but apparently you did. So
I
this
did well
time,
because I have to come up with a response to it that is different than the response I came up with the first time, which
that's
is
true.
actually a challenging ask.
This is true. So the first one, the one I did last week, I actually stole from Black Adder, which if you've never watched that TV show with Rowan Atkinson, that's where that one came from. It's one of my favorite quips. But this one
Must be
actually came
before
from
my
a gentleman
time.
called Alex Horn, who did the "who was once described" thing on a show, and I thought it was kind of cute, so I stole it. But you were once described. It's a factual statement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, do you
Maybe
want to
even
know another
twice.
factual statement?
Here we go. Let's do this.
We're joined today with our once again, this is a repeat guest with our favorite dating app. It's Christian Mengel. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I everybody's favorite dating app, of course, but yeah, I'm coming to you live from Kansas City International Airport, coming back from a conference, and I yeah, that's where I'm at. That's what I'm doing.
We you're putting the destination in Destination Discourse today. Like you are the
Yeah,
first mobile. Look at that. You for those
Oh,
watching
yeah.
see
on
that?
YouTube, you got a cool sign in the background there.
There we
That's
go. A
awesome.
little FIFA action. There we go.
That's right.
Well,
That little old World Cup that's coming.
here's some good incentive for people to watch on YouTube instead of just listening. You'll get to see Christian making his way through the airport. It's great.
Yeah, but the downside is they get to see our faces. So it's a trade-off.
Just like anything, you got to take the good with the bad.
Hey, it's
This is
natural, right? The guy with the media hot takes is coming to you live on the move, right?
that. Oh
Just
wow,
like a
look at you.
reporter. Just like a
Yeah.
reporter. Yeah,
He,
He's
wow,
he's our he's our anchor or our field reporter.
a field
yeah,
reporter coming back to you in the studio. That's
yeah.
amazing.
We're
Well,
on
Christian,
site in Kansas City with Christian Mingle.
it does sort of sound like a reporter's name. Man, he's like anyone watching this is gonna get motion sickness. He's like moving down an escalator right now. This is crazy. Well,
Guys,
Christian, we bought.
we're getting those YouTube numbers up. So somebody's got to
Oh.
check live to get this full
Wow,
experience. So,
I felt
And
like
here
Christian's
comes the
taking over the
drug
show.
dog. Here comes the drug dog. Let's see if he makes it.
sorry guys,
That
got
would
to
be
go real quick.
amazing if he gets stopped by them right now. That'd be amazing. Well, Christian, we're glad you're back. I know last time we talked a lot about your background in media and how you saw a lot of similar parallels with the DMO world. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it. But today we're going to be talking about something different. But before we do, please move forward. And I keep hearing the tannoy over your microphone, Christian, which
Or
is
you
kind
know
of
what?
fun. It's.
I'll drown it out real
Are you
quick.
going
Is
to
that
drown it
okay?
out?
Yeah.
It's time for Stu's news.
I missed it.
I hope
I did. I
I
missed
hope
it.
I hope Christian has it on speaker so the whole airport can hear.
Is everybody dancing, Christian?
No
No,
one
it's
was
just
dancing.
me. It's just me.
Yeah, okay. See, he should have put it blaring on speaker. So Adam, we're going back to the old jingle. Is that what we're doing? Last week you tried to curveball.
I don't know. You didn't seem to really hate the new one enough, and it made me feel like I need to try again. I'm gonna have to give it another shot. But apparently,
Okay.
the British Star Wars rap was not good enough for your liking.
Well, I mean, to be fair, this one's not really either, but you stuck with it for 60 odd episodes, 70 episodes now. So
Okay,
who knows?
okay. So you want me
Ah,
to give it a try?
well, do or do not. There is no try. All right. So today's Stu's News, I'm subscribed to a newsletter that just gives out a lot of cool little tidbits about AI. It keeps me up. It's called Mindstream. And today's issue, they were talking a lot about Apple, right? And Apple's been in the news recently. I'm sure you've seen rumblings that they've signed a deal with Google. They're going to pay Google about $1 billion a year to be the underlying AI infrastructure for the what Siri is going to be. And then today they came out and said they're actually going to be releasing the new upgraded Siri later this year. So it will probably be announced and showcased in June and released in the iOS update in September. But they're really hyping this up, talking about it being very conversational, a lot more like the conversation in ChatGPT, talking about it being integrated into apps. So you'll actually be able to command app functionality and making it available to third-party partners to use within their non-Apple apps as well. Now, they're also really claiming there's a lot here for privacy. They're going to do a lot to lock down your information to make sure it's secure. And so the reason I bring up this is a couple of fold, right? One is we've heard this rhetoric before from Apple talking about Apple Intelligence and how it's going to revolutionize, and they've really disappointed for several years now on that front. But two, if they do crack it this year, if 2026 is the year when Apple really comes out with a very functional Siri that is now on par with the best LLMs in terms of conversation and ability to control your device, this is the moment, this is that watershed moment when the consumer is going to start building trust and relying on AI. We still don't see the vast majority of consumers using AI for everyday things, right? It's still a help me write my email better tool. So to me, this September 2026 date, if they pull it off, is an important date for us all to put in our calendar because that's the beginning of the shift in consumers adopting AI. So, Adam, any response to that?
Well, call me a lover scorned because there's been so many times since Apple introduced Siri that we've been told, well, this is going to make it where you have a truly hands-free experience, right? And you won't need to actually type on your phone and do all this and that. And I use Siri the same way today that I did, what, 5, 6 years ago when Siri came out at first. And Apple Intelligence, I waited to get the new phone until Apple Intelligence came out because I wanted to have it on my phone, and I have found it utterly useless. And so my hopes for September of 2026 that Apple suddenly is going to figure out how to integrate AI into the phone experience to where it actually makes a difference, I I'll believe it when I see it.
Fool me once. Yeah, I get it. Christian, how do you feel about it?
You know, don't attack me just yet, but I've been an iPhone owner for about 4 days.
Oh,
Before that,
oh.
yes, brand new.
Yeah, from
Um,
green text to blue.
I
yes, it
promise you
shifted.
that anyone that texts me in green, I judge them. I absolutely judge them.
So knowing
We
that,
wouldn't
yeah,
have had
my
you back a second time if your
Mhm.
texts were still green.
right, right. And so there you go. Sorry, can you guys still?
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
hear
you're
you.
fine. Okay. Yeah, well, sorry, I'm at Dunkin' Donuts getting a drink, so you guys don't hear me, slopping while I'm walking. But anyway, yeah, so new to iPhone. My wife wouldn't let me continue in the old ways. My previous phone was a pre-COVID phone. I'd had it since 2018. So I'm rapidly catching up um, to the iPhone world. But question to you guys, I mean, isn't hasn't Siri always kind of been AI? Like, why is that different? I feel like Siri was everybody's first real introduction into getting used to AI.
Siri, AI is a broad brush, right? Siri
Yeah,
certainly used natural language processing. It certainly had some components of machine learning, but it was still very algorithmic and very limited. It didn't use generative AI, right? It couldn't adapt on the fly, so it would take very specific commands and do very specific things. What the leap of generative
Yeah.
AI allows is for it to understand nuanced context and to do multiple different things for the first time, right? And so that's
yeah.
the promise that hasn't been realized yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say instead of calling Siri AI, I would call it AS. yeah, it's artificial stupidity, and I mean, every time you say the word sorry to somebody, your computer wakes up and says, "What do you want?" And it's like, no, shut
How
up.
does it say it?
I don't
Do
know. I was
that
trying to
voice
do a
and
British accent.
that voice and that face again. I want to see it.
I, I don't know. That's a one-time thing, but
Okay.
that is how I picture Siri. Like if Siri were a person, what my face and voice just did, that's what I picture it as.
Yeah. It's very frustrating. I mean, it's good for setting timers, alarms, playing music, blah blah blah, but it can't do anything functional. Right? I can't really say, "Hey, do this, do that, and do that," and have a conversation with it. And even if I say, "Hey, what's near me?" I can't have a continual progressive conversation. It'll show me some restaurants for like 30 seconds and then they disappear and I have no way to get back to them. And then I have to
Yeah.
ask it again. So it's very frustrating.
Siri's primary role is just communicating to advertisers what you talk about on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's probably true. It's an input device for advertisers. That's funny. I think this is a big deal. I think this is the time they'll get it right. I think bringing it finally admitting defeat in terms of saying, all right, we need someone like Gemini, but they're also or Google with Gemini, they're also keeping their options open so they could hot swap the LLM underlying technology at a later date. Um, I think, yeah, I know I'm gonna regret this, but I think 2026 is the year they actually make it usable.
You know what? Let's make that one of Stewart's official 2026 predictions, in addition to the list that we did a few weeks ago. That Stewart's official
Yeah.
prediction is that Apple will actually achieve what it's been promising for years. And I think that's a great prediction, Stewart. Let's look back at the end of the year and see how you did.
We might want to narrow the goalposts a little bit to define what that means, but sure, I'll take that.
No.
I'll take that. All right. Well, Christian, we talking of predictions, you had sent us an email. We'd already recorded our predictions episode when you sent it in, but you had three predictions for this year, and there's one in particular I really wanted to dig into, but there were two others we can touch on briefly, and they're two that have been mentioned on the show before. So the first one was we're probably going to see an increase in having to lean on earned media, and that's something I think Mr. Adam Stoker, who spent the first part of his career talking about owned media, has now fundamentally shifted to the earned media bandwagon. But tell us a little bit about that real quickly, Christian, if you don't mind.
Yeah, obviously, like what Adam had said, and it being a leading source for LLMs, and it's seen as an authoritative, the publications in terms when people want transparency and trust, they continue to tell us that that matters to them. And if AI is going to continue to give them what they want, it's got to be trusted and credited, sources. And that's where it's still currently, and it can always change, but it has the leg up on social media because if you want, accuracy and trust, nobody goes to social media for, uh, the 100% everything I see is true. Well, some people do; they shouldn't know, but um, so that's where I was coming from that. But my question with earned media, I'm kind of going to leave it open to you guys because I'm still, 4 years into tourism. My previous, life was a career in media, so we never really used the phrase earned media because everything we did was, storytelling and media. So we never heard it from others like that. But, has when you budget for earned media, and obviously everybody's at different scales, you got to be careful on the budgeting side, right? Because there's got to be a fine line between paid and earned. It's like, did you actually earn the coverage that's talking about you, or did you pay for somebody to talk about you? And I feel like if you pay for somebody to talk about you, that's paid advertising, even if it's a publication. That's how I lean into it because
For
it
sure,
wasn't
for sure.
truly earned, um, unless you have that natural, coverage of a story. And in that case, how we budget for earned media, again, varying budget sizes and DMOs. I would say on the small end, it can be, uh, maybe a gift basket or a little bit of a fam trip budget to say, hey, we're going to host these journalists if and when they come, and obviously you scale that up to more catered stuff of, hey, we know we can get these publications to write about what we're doing because we've built these relationships over the years. And so we've got their, hotel, whatever expenses to get them here to talk about it. Is that how you would say the majority of DMO's budget for earned media?
No, not necessarily. I think the challenge that you're sort of alluding to right now is that there's a blend, right, between earned and paid media. In owned, but it's really there's a symbiotic relationship between paid and earned where I know of DMOs that put a lot of their money into, let's say, print magazines, right? Let's say places like Travel and Leisure and stuff like that. And they also are the same cities that come up on their lists of top 10 destinations and things like that, right? And so there's this quid pro quo that happens. And we've seen it and we've leveraged it. We've noticed that the more we lean in and build a relationship through paid media with certain publishers, the more earned media you get. Even though they claim they're church and state, I think that line is blurred and there's sort of an unwritten understanding at this point. So I don't know that people are thinking about it the way you are. I think there's still a separate budget, but I do think people are thinking about how those teams work together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, which is okay. And I want to kind of shift a question to a completely different thing that's more of kind of an open case study because this is destination discourse, so I'm just throwing ideas out there. But are there destinations that use earned media as a tool for economic development? And
For sure.
what I mean by that is, can part of our budget for earned media be actually destination economic development, knowing when we do this project, it's going to get covered in the media, and small scale, small towns can be, maybe that's a mural project, maybe that's a redoing a park with flowers and stuff. You got, kind of small scale budget, but people are going to be taking photos. It's going to get its reach. If you're real small, maybe your local media can cover some of that stuff, but then you scale it up a little bit to, we're a very Western destination, like Pony Express, Jesse James. So I think, what if we budgeted for kind of a little ride share service that is kind of horse and buggy, no business locally has that kind of money to expense for that kind of thing, but it's kind of a marketing ploy of, we're improving our destination's image by investing in something like that. And knowing the return on that is, we're going to get more coverage. We're going to get more earned media. Local publications, they would pick that up because that's our brand. That's our community. Our local businesses are going to talk about that. Obviously the visitors are going to be like, oh, this is new, or, whatever it is. You scale that up even more to a bigger thing. And maybe it's, hey, what if we took our outdoor media budget for the next 5 years, put a pause on all of it, and instead move that money to be kind of a capital investor in a sports complex, because we know the ROI on a sports complex, sports tournaments, hotel rooms, it's going to be bigger than 5 years of our billboards that we've put up, for who knows how long, just because it's what we've always put up. But it's kind of it's a risk because it's outside normal marketing, but we're investing for the purpose of our destination, number one. But two, we're calling it earned media because we know it's going to get covered. We know it's going to get talked about. I don't know if other destinations have gone down that rabbit hole.
So let's do this, because you had three predictions. I think that question is going to lead into the one I really want to drill into. So let's really just acknowledge the other one first, and then we'll jump back to that. So the other one you talked about was one we've talked about and others have predicted. Dan Janes from Mad had projected this, and I had predicted this too, which is we're going to see, and I think, Adam, you'd corroborated that you're hearing rumblings about this, but we're going to see mergers and acquisitions happen on a pretty aggressive scale in 2026 as budgets tighten in the DMO world. So that was the other one that we're not going to drill in today, but I did agree with that. So let's jump back to this conversation. I think you're treading on really dangerous ground. My gut is, right, which is there are very and I don't know your funding, right? And every state and every municipality has its own restrictions on how money can be spent. And I think there's some gray area. It's not all black and white. We have a debate all the time. We have one person on our staff whose role is specifically to be the devil's advocate, to argue against us spending money on something. Like that's their job. They're our accountability person. And so we
It
have
sounds
to
like an
have that.
awesome gig,
It,
actually.
it is fun, but we sort of recognize that they have to be that devil's advocate, right? And we appreciate it because they keep us from getting too far ahead of our skis. You can always push the envelope, but at some point there's a snap reaction back, and someone is going to either get litigious and sue you, or worse, an elected official is going to say you're breaking the law, and we're going to change the law to remove you from receiving this money. And so I think the idea of you doing something as bold as an actual experience, which theoretically could be viewed as competitive to your members, your stakeholders, because someone, if it was a viable business, could, there are horse and cart experiences in every southern town, right? So you could be viewed as competing with potential businesses and doing something where maybe the byproduct is you get some exposure in owned media, but it's not the intent. And I think the intent of how the money is spent, the primary reason you're spending the money, would be very ambiguous in that. That's my take. Adam, what do you think?
I want to take this idea and maybe modify it a little bit. The first thing I would say is, Stuart, you're coming at it from a like, what is legal, which to me is almost like an order of operations question, right?
Mhm.
Can you do that after the budget's appropriated, or do you need to go get approval before the budget's appropriated so that you've got all your T's crossed and your I's dotted or whatever? But as you were describing the fact, Stuart, that any private business could start like a horse and buggy kind of transportation company. One of the challenges that destinations have all across the country is the fact that that hasn't happened yet, right? And so you've got all these opportunities to create events and transportation methods that, by the way, it would be an incredible content opportunity. Like Christian said, it would be an incredible earned media opportunity. But what if destinations actually created experiences and sold them off to the private sector because of the win-win opportunity that it would create? And that now you've got a revenue generation opportunity because you're handling the startup fees, you're creating this experience that can then be handed off to a private operator, and then you can get your investment back so that you can continue to invest in experiences. I think the economic engine that the destination marketing organization could become is pretty incredible at that point. But of course, I don't have to deal with all the legality that you guys have to.
You're making me really nervous with this. I mean, and I guess that's what part of this show is, right? To sort of explore ideas. So
It
to be
is.
clear,
I
your
thought this
third,
was a safe space, so I thought, this is the
Yeah.
group to bring
yeah,
it up to.
yeah, and to be clear, your third prediction was like about the role of the DMO changing, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, I mean, that's what we're talking about here. Like, what is the role of the DMO? Now, in an episode you have not heard yet, Christian, that we recorded, that's going out last week as the listeners listen to this, we talked about how the primary role for the DMO over time has been sort of the fuel for the engine, and we debated around, does is the DMO becoming the mechanic? Is it the GPS? Is it other parts of the vehicle in that analogy? But I think what you're saying goes even further, right? Which is, I don't know, it kind of gives the DMO almost unlimited, unfettered, unrestricted control, which my immediate reaction to that is there's going to be a lot of people say that is not your role and you're treading on my toes or you're doing things that are distracting you from the primary purpose, which is always going to be driving demand. It's always going to be putting fuel in the engine for hospitality. And
Can I
so,
ask you a question on that, Stuart?
yeah,
Like why would it be okay or kosher for destinations to own events? Because there's destination owned events all
yeah.
over the country, as opposed
Mhm.
to the destination owning additional experiences.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't own events, right? It's not something we do in Myrtle Beach, and it's something that we've debated. Um, I don't know that would be something we and our stakeholders would tolerate, you know? So I would love to get on DMOs that do and hear how
Yeah.
they integrated that into their community and how people are. Where I could see it getting, where I could see it happening is this like maybe in specific categories like sporting events, if you're filling up like a specific public place like a sports center that's owned by the county. But now, as I'm talking out loud, then I'm like, well, the convention center might be owned by the county or city. So, what's the difference between that and filling up a meeting space? So, I don't know. It's interesting. I haven't really thought about it a lot. And the whole conversation scares me, candidly. Good job,
Yeah,
Christian.
it is a scary conversation. Everybody's different. I think I'm also coming at it maybe from, maybe this is a smaller community, smaller DMO line of thinking or problem, and maybe they've not necessarily voiced it. But I mean, we're a smaller destination. We're a less than 5 million total budget, and so in rural America, in the middle of the U.S., and so what I see a lot of with my peers is it's not so much as competition in terms of, hey, we got these visitors that we're trying to get from these, if not us, it's them type of thing, and we're trying to keep up with the Joneses kind of thing. But in this part of the country, a lot of small DMOs are in survival mode where they're seeing their historic downtowns deteriorate, things get bulldozed, the good days are behind it. Um, the residents feel that as well. They feel like they can't get out. Everybody's kind of in really tough situations because nobody's really got the answer. And you can kind of track this over decades of, man, we're trying to sustain ourselves, trying to do things, and nobody's really able to really commit to these kind of projects that really stand out and make a change. Kind of like to what Adam was saying of, yeah, maybe we don't necessarily have to own it, but maybe there's a guy that can ride a horse and has a buggy, and we say we want this service in our downtown. Can we pay you to do this?
Yeah.
And that's his source because maybe that's something he always wanted to do and couldn't do it because he didn't have a funding source, and maybe the CVB can, and that's a big tourism bonus. That's an added, especially for a small destination. That's a big bonus. But
So,
So,
yeah,
what we're talking about is DMOs as angel investors, right?
yeah. I guess I'm just thinking, from why we do what we do. You know, and this gets to I think the main topic that Stuart was wanting to talk about, and the goal is to dive deeper into our purpose, our mission, and our values as DMOs. And almost all of us, it seems like, have somewhat tied to economic impact or quality of life. And so, if that's our why, and we talked about this in the leadership conference I was just at. Shout out to that. It was a great experience, but it was brought up. I believe it was Bill Geist's example for Iowa City, where they had their kind of mission statement or purpose that said, "We do this for quality of life." And what they did was flip it and instead say, "We improve the quality of life by doing these things." And the mentality flip for the community was, we do quality of life. That's our purpose. These other things will help that, but our purpose is not doing these other things. Our purpose is quality of life for Iowa City anyway. And some people, if they don't have quality of life, it's economic impact. And so that seems to be a big driver in terms of, kind of going back to the why. And like you said, the reason it's a dangerous topic is because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like the biggest threat to DMOs right now, and we saw it from the next study, Destination X study, the 42% people of DMOs think their funding is going to get cut within the next 5 years, which is politically motivated. So I think our biggest threat is politics, locally, nationally, especially locally, state level stuff. Everybody's a little different, but if we get our funding cut, it's probably a political motivated move, right? And someone's probably going to try to catch us doing what they think we're not supposed to do. But if you go back to, if people don't know what our purpose is, we're a very easy target. Because if you think of other drivers for communities like school districts, cities, counties, your hospital, we can probably just right here take 5 minutes and think up, here's what their purpose is, because it's kind of self-explanatory just based on what they are. But if those entities are asked, what's the purpose of a convention and visitors bureau, or what's the purpose of visit blank, what's the purpose of the DMO, I don't think they'd get it right. I don't think the city count, unless we're attached to it, unless we're government, but if we're a 501c6, I don't think the majority of our school districts and universities and things, or our average community will get it right. I think they'd think our primary purpose is to cater to tourists and bring in tourism, but why? And I don't think that they think that far.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. I think you're missing the other side of the coin, right? I think if you can, our biggest threat is a lack of relevance. That's our real biggest threat, right? If we're not relevant because we're not providing value, that's when we're in trouble. And so I think the impact we have is as important as the why. Like, I think we need to know our why.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
But I think our community needs to feel and believe the impact we have on the why, right? On the quality of life, on the economic prosperity. And I think most DMOs are coming to this conclusion of it's a 1-2 punch, right? We drive economic prosperity, and the byproduct, the beneficiary of that is the quality of life for the residents. But I don't think every DMO knows how to articulate that value and measure that value and communicate that value to the stakeholders. I think that's where we fall short.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on the relevance, and I know you guys have talked about like the difference between actually being relevant and the illusion of relevance. There's a dangerous line there, and I wonder if we get too caught up in ROI having to always be numbers. I think traditionally that's what it is in the business world, and obviously in politics, ROI is a number for everybody. But when we think of the community, if we're doing this for the community, actual residents, citizens, if that's when we go back far enough, that's why we exist, is for our residents, for our community. They don't operate with numbers as ROI. I think when they think, what's the return on my investment? I don't think that they look at the dollar amount or a specific number, especially with their taxes. They think, am I safe? Am I getting my kids educated? Are our roads full of potholes, or are they maintained? Like, I think that citizens, our residents, actually want tangible results. They don't care that it costs them. They just want to know, what did I pay for? What did I get out of this? Not necessarily what was the number. And maybe that's just me. I'm not a numbers person. I didn't get into marketing for the numbers.
No, I think you're right. I think it's, if you listen to especially some of the smartest people in the industry, like Amir Alon and folks at Tourism Economics, they'll always tell you that it's the story that's being told that's way more powerful and impactful than the data, right? But I think you need both, right? I think it's not one dimensional. I don't think you can tell the stories without the data. I don't think you can just push out data and expect people to do it. I think one of the most impactful pieces of advice I ever got, and one we try to leverage whenever we can, is the DMO doesn't need to be the storyteller, or if we are the storyteller, we're the guide in the story, we're telling stories about other people and the impact. Because if I'm in front of city council and saying this event or this initiative is impactful to the community, you made this many millions of dollars, that's one thing. But then if you have the florist and another service come up and tell that same message and say, this event impacted my business XYZ, that's way more impactful than us selling it. So I think you have to tell those stories, but those stories, I guess the underlying sort of core of those is usually data related. Like, my business did better, and then the actual number doesn't matter as much as this helped. There's a positive increase in demand for my product because of this event or this initiative or whatever it is. So I think you're right. I think it is less about stories. I don't think it's always about the individual's benefit, right? Because you can tell someone, hey, you saved this many dollars because of tourists, or you can say, you get to eat at this restaurant because of tourism, right? This restaurant wouldn't exist because of this tourism. But I think you also have to tell that story of the altruistic story of your neighbors in your community is also benefiting, not just you as an individual. I think that's when you get real impact. And then you create like a zeitgeist level of appreciation for what you do. It's not just an individual thing. It's like a culture within your community, which is where
Yeah.
ultimately what we're trying to get to.
I really think what we've uncovered with several of the conversations we've had over the last several weeks is the reason that a lot of destinations are in the middle of an existential crisis. We have now asked the question several times, what is the core role and responsibility of a DMO? And we all have our opinions, but nobody knows. And that's kind of killing me right now. It's kind of breaking my
Mm-hmm.
brain right now because the everything that we're talking about, relevance is important, and communicating our story to the residents is important, and getting visitation is important. But nobody agrees. And Stuart, you made the analogy or the metaphor of the engine, right? If tourism is an engine, who's the mechanic on a previous episode? And is the destination the mechanic? Well, some people think it's the GPS. Some people think it's the mechanic. We don't have true consensus in the industry of what our job is, which
Mm-hmm.
means we don't know what we're working towards, and no wonder there's not standardization of outcomes and KPIs and all the different things that we need in order to be successful. This to me is really stressful of how can we guarantee the future of an industry that we don't know what its job is?
Well, I think, and we've illustrated this on in the show before, which is there's almost a badge of honor phrase where people use all the time in the industry. It says, when you've seen one DMO, you've seen one DMO, right? And it's almost said with pride. And I think that's actually the root of our problem. Like I think there should be a blueprint that is extensible to configure to small DMOs, to large DMOs, to beach cities, to metro. But I think the core of what why we exist, what we do, shouldn't be so unique, right? There should be standardization. And I'll call out some of the big folks in the industry. I think the big associations in the industry have let us down. They've allowed this to happen. There hasn't been standardization or at least blueprints and recommendations of some of this stuff. Yes, we get things like lexicons, what words we should use, but that's such a surface level thing, right? It's not a core about our mission, our vision, our core values, our purpose, any of that stuff. Like that we need to do better as an industry.
Yeah, and I think I mean that's why I had it in my goals in terms of I do believe that this is a year that a lot of organizations are going to either review or change their mission, vision, value statements, update them. If they didn't already, I would say with COVID, because I think that was the last time that a lot of people probably looked back and said, "What are we doing here? What's our purpose? We don't have tourists coming. Uh, why do we really exist?" So I do think a lot of organizations evaluated it during COVID, post COVID, but the ones that didn't, the ones that maybe they've had the same thing for 30 years because 30 years they were voted into existence and the terminology of it matched exactly what was on the ballot to make sure, hey, if somebody's going to come after us for our, what we're doing, we need to remind them, you voted for this. This is why we exist. This is exactly what the voters asked for. So if we keep that top of mind, we're golden. But in doing that, the fear of, well, if we ever changed it, we wouldn't want someone to think that it's, that we're trying to pull a wool over their eyes and become.
What do you think of that, Stuart?
Uh, um, yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because I think to be fair to the industry, we we are all unique, right? Every community is made up of different ingredients, right? We have different assets, we have different tourism economy, we have different stakeholders, we have different elected officials, and I think that's probably why we've ended up where we are. But I think, there needs to be some ground rules, some agreement on the non-negotiables of our industry. Like I think we all agree that DMOs in part should help to create demand for their destination, right? I don't think there's a DMO out there that doesn't try to create demand for their destination. But I think we should also sort of put some stakes in the ground and say, what else do we do? What is our role? Is it whatever metaphor you want to choose, but is it to help convene and coordinate the efforts related to the product and the experience? Well, I think we need to agree as an industry that yes, that is part of our role.
But let me ask you this then, because I have talked to a ton of destinations that have gone through the strategic planning process, and they're investing tens, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars into these strategic plans. And the same organizations who invested all that money into the strategic plans don't know what their role is. And so it's like, what in our strategic planning process, we're even failing.
Yeah. Well, but the reason we're failing is because it's our strategic plan we're trying to develop. It's not the community's strategic plan. And there's cases, I mean, I'm not going to call them out, but there's a city about 2 hours south of where I am. You can assume where that is, where they try to do a community strategic plan, and there was a disagreement between different group organizations. Most cities are going to have an economic development, a chamber, a DMO. They might have some other sort of downtown group or whatever. If those aren't all aligned in terms of what the vision and the objectives are for the community, then you're never going to agree on roles, right? Because if you don't know what you're trying to accomplish, then you're accomplishing different things. So your roles are going to be different for each of you, right? And so in this case, a strategic plan was brought in. One entity funded it, but tried to say, let's work together. The other entity felt like it was a power grab or, treading on their toes, and egos got in the way, and it fell apart. It became one institution's strategic plan, which is never going to get off the ground. What we're trying to do in Myrtle Beach is we're gonna create a strategic plan that is comprehensive. It's not our plan. We're not driving it. We're convening it. We're funding it. But the people from multiple geographic locations, multiple industries, multiple institutions are going to be the ones that are driving the strategy in determining who's on first. Like, what is our role? What is their role? What is and I think where most strategic plans fail is they don't get prescriptive into how you execute the strategic plan. They say, hey, we need this in our community. We need that in our community. We need to do this. It doesn't say who's doing that, what their role is, how it's funded, any of that stuff. And then the strategic planner moves on to the next city, 9 out of 10, and the city's left to squabble over who has the biggest stick and who gets to make the decisions, and that's where they fail.
It's kind of funny to me. Sorry if I dropped out earlier, guys, but it's a little bit funny to me that it feels like right now it's never been easier to track what we do, yet it never has been an easier time to target DMOs. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That it feels like from DI and these organizations, sorry about the overhead noise, from these organizations telling us that no, now's the time is when people are going to start coming for you. Have your stuff in order, make sure your board, your staff are aware of why you exist and how what you do daily goes back to that. We feel like, okay, now's the time that organizations are going to start coming for our money and they're going to want a piece of our budget. But it's coming at the time where it's been the easiest to track what we do. I mean, I don't know. I've not had the conversation of how the 90s were in terms of you had ratings and subscriber counts. And is that all you tracked, for marketing? I wasn't there for that. I was watching Barney, but it's a different era. It's totally different, but
Yeah.
we still have the same mission, vision, values that we did when we were watching Barney on. It
Well,
hasn't
Not all
changed
of
for a
us
lot
were
of.
watching Barney.
Yeah.
the
It,
reason
it,
for that though, Christian, is I really feel like with all that data that we have available, we've built all of our evidence towards the wrong narrative, which then leads
Right.
people to ask, wait, is this even what these guys should be doing? And then you open the door for attacking funding, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I I don't know. We're on this like dead end road of true attribution that ultimately, since we can't control the transaction, is going to be impossible to get to. And that's where stakeholders start to ask more questions. Stuart, what were you look like you were going to jump in.
yeah, I was going to just say this is what Emily Zatucci in her episode called the data hangover, right? So
Yeah.
I will tell you this just to get a little, so we're not just sort of doomsdaying on this topic a little bit. Like, I'll tell you what we're trying to do to address this specifically, because we're certainly having these similar conversations in our market about, are we spending too much? Is it enough on marketing? Should we be spending more on product development? All that stuff is happening everywhere. What we're doing is and you're going to like this, Adam, because it's a word you like to use a lot. We're trying to build trust in the community, right? Through radical collaboration, honest dialogue, we're trying to build a coalition, a collaboration of everyone that has a voice and needs to be heard on these topics, right? And our role is to educate people, like the impact is today, what it would be if things were changed, and making sure that all voices are accounted for, heard, and considered. And then we're trying not to be the decision makers. We're trying to make the community, both the residents and the businesses, the benefactors of what we do, for them to ultimately make educated decisions. But our role is to educate them, right? Our role is to share information, build trust, build relationships, to open channels of communications, to convene the people that need to be at the table, so that the community moves forward as in one voice with alignment versus a bunch of factions trying to take credit for each other's work and squabble over a few dollars. That's what we're trying to do.
If I'm in a destination and I'm not sure exactly what my role is in the holistic group that is the city or county or whatever the group is that I'm in, I'm going to boil it down to get attention, build trust. And if you can demonstrate the ability to do that, to get attention and leverage it to build trust, both internally and externally, that's the best way to show the impact of what you're doing to the community. This, with all the different possible rabbit holes that you can go down, I feel like it's going to get real complicated, and the standardization is also going to get relatively impossible. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's where my head keeps going.
Yeah, I think every leader within DMOs right now needs to be spending as much, if not more, time out of the office as in the office. You absolutely need to be doing the block and tackle marketing stuff and promoting the destination and driving awareness. But you also have to be building stakeholders in. I'm going to quote a good friend of the show, Brad Dean here, which is, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? And so if there are conversations being had about the future of your destination and the DMO is not present, you got to find a way to get at that table. And if you can't get at that table, go create a bigger table and get everyone that was at that other table to come join you on that table. Give them incentives to do that. And there's myriad of ways to do that. You got to provide value to people so that they want to talk to you, that they see the value for them in engaging with you. But you have to be at the table. And it's not just the DMO table, it's everyone in your community has to be at that same table talking about the same things and saying the quiet part out loud. One of the things I love about our organization over the last 12 months is, we were suffered from that same thing most board meetings do, where you have a safe, controlled conversation in the boardroom, and then you look in the parking lot after the board meeting, and there's six people in a little circle there for 30 minutes having the post-meeting meeting where real decisions and real thoughts are being shared. You got to eliminate that. Like, if that's happening, you're doing something wrong. If you're seeing attrition in your attendance, if there's not many people showing up to your build meetings, you're doing something wrong. You have to create an environment where the people on your board are the decision makers in your community, and the conversation is being had out loud in front of everyone with disagreements. You have to create that environment for people to be able to be comfortable having those conversations. That might be the biggest pause ever in silence on this show. You're just nodding at him.
It makes sense to me. I actually was going to see if Christian had any reaction to that, but I do think you're right, Stuart. I just
Right? Say that again.
the how. I said I think you could possibly be right.
That's funny.
Yeah, I guess, you know, kind of with the two, again, the voice of top, sorry. The two things that I brought up, the earned media, but if it could be utilized toward kind of product development, destination development, economic development, and leverage that as a part of the media strategy, knowing we'll get coverage and that kind of thing. Going back to our mission, vision, and values, we can't really have the conversations of, you know, is this risk worth the potential, or if it falls flat, you know, kind of tossing back to your old episode of, you know, you had one on risk, you know, like should DMOs be, you know, more risky in certain areas, but kind of like what we brought up today, it's really difficult to even have the conversation on risky topics just because we know that we're a target to some, and we might not even know who's targeting us necessarily, but we know somebody's watching what we're doing, and that's the difficult part. And I guess that's why I toss back to, we really do got to get serious about our mission, vision, and value statements, and not just check the box of, hey, this is what good organizations do, but we really need to figure it out and say, no, here's what we got to live by. And then when we have those risky conversations on risky topics and say, if this works, will it help our purpose? If it doesn't work, you know, what's the worst that can happen? It gets talked about. We're trying to make things happen. We're doing things. Again, going back to the whole, you know, I'm a big fan of tangible ROI over numbers. I want, you know, when someone says, what's the CVB do? Be like, well, we wouldn't have these tournaments. We wouldn't have this nice park you like. These museums would have closed 30 years ago. Your favorite restaurant's totally gone because 60% of their visitors are not from here. Whoever's in the hotels walking over or door dashing, whatever it is, like your favorite restaurant's alive because of the visitors. I think those tangible things, we got to get that point across, and then people will fight for us when someone picks that fight. That's my mentality there, is that if someone does come after us, I'd rather it not be us that has to defend ourselves, but I'd rather the community stand up and be like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, because what they say about us carries so much more weight than what we say about ourselves.
For sure. For sure. As you're talking, part of me is thinking about how we're so much on the defensive right now with this conversation, right? And I think the industry in general is on the defensive in general, and that's never a position of strength, and it usually doesn't end well. And so, how do we go on the offensive? And so, this is just me thinking out loud. But what if by we, I mean some of the big organizations, the power structures in our industry, and if they're not willing to do it, maybe a group of DMOs and allies get together and say, what are all the functions that should be handled in a destination related to tourism, right? Just don't worry about who's doing it. Don't worry about if it's the DMO's role or what we're doing. Just list out and diagram out in detail what does a healthy tourism economy look like in a destination. Here's all the functions that have to occur, because then you have a framework that can be malleable for every destination, because then you can sort of take that and overlay it with who are the organizations that exist or don't exist in my community that are handling this, and where are the gaps that aren't being handled. And that's where we need to focus our energy, is filling those gaps. And then taking that blueprint to those other people and say, hey, there's gaps here. We know you're doing this, we're doing this, they're doing this. What do we do about this part that's missing? And I'm not being prescriptive. I'm not saying the DMO should be the one that does that gap. But we should be having a conversation about, does it make sense that this group's doing this piece? Does it make sense that this person's not doing this piece? And then we come to the table together and say, we're just interested in the destination being successful from a hospitality perspective. We're just convening these people together. This is about radical collaboration. This isn't about power grabbing. This isn't about empire building. This is about improving the quality of life and the prosperity of our community. So I don't know. You might have sent me down a rabbit hole.
That's what I wanted to do.
What I like about what you just said, though, Stuart, is that's also a great way to identify who should be at the table that's not. Because if you start with where do we need to go as a community, and then boil it down, okay, whose job is what, you're going to find there's people who should have a voice at the table that don't, and then you actually get everybody pushing in the same direction, at least, in a vacuum.
Yeah, and there's so many tentacles to that. Like I could just off the top of my head think of like 50 or 100 elements to that. Like it's everything from childcare and education to workforce housing and temporary workers and transportation and infrastructure and population. And like there's a ton there that is not the responsibility of the DMO that has to function well for the community to be successful, right? And I bet every city's doing it slightly different, but every city's needs are probably fairly similar, maybe to different degrees. So maybe that's where we start. I don't know. I'd love for people to chime in on this one, and some of the smarter, especially the consultant types in the industry that have been around and seen it. And maybe this is one we follow up with other folks and chew up a little bit more. This is great, Christian. We're about out of time, my friend. Was there any threads you wanted to pull or any last words of wisdom before?
I think, if I remember right, you guys are going to be at Destination International's Marcom Summit. Is that right?
This episode might actually be out after that. So maybe
well, then,
we're doing this weird timing thing.
Then you guys did a great job. If it comes out after, that was wonderful. I loved it. If it comes out before, let's have this conversation there, But no, if not that, a future one. I really liked what you said on big organizations that not necessarily an umbrella, but the big ones, they should be the ones saying, here are the things that are okay for the general DMO. Here's some risks that, they're risky from a local level. They might say it's risky. We think they're okay when there's strategy backed, and we will support you in your attempt to do this. Like that's what I think we need. So when our local politicians say that's not what you do, we can say, no, this is industry standard. Look at this organization that represents these destinations. We're right in line with what everyone else is doing, because whenever everybody else is doing it, it's okay. Like you said earlier, events are okay. Events are okay for some DMOs. Not all DMOs do it. We're also a destination that does not do events, but we'll support anybody and market them and that kind of thing. But we're not the organizers. But things like that. That's we should continue to have conversations about it.
And maybe that's it, right? Maybe it isn't that necessarily some of these big institutions tell us and dictate it, right? But they should be creating the forums for this discussion to be had. It shouldn't be up to Destination Discourse in Adam and Stuart to be creating this conversation, right? These guys should be doing it too. And so when we go to conferences, I would challenge everyone that puts on a conference, let's not do the same vanilla stuff. If you look at a topic and say, we could have had this exact topic on the agenda 2 or 3 years ago, it doesn't need to be on the agenda anymore. We need to be moving the industry forward with discourse, with conversation, with challenging each other, with scary things like we did today where we don't know the answers. That's how we'll come to consensus, and that's how we can help move the industry forward. So, I mean, that's just a rallying cry to the industry. Put pressure. If you sit on a committee that's planning an event for 2026, challenge yourself to be bold, be courageous, to do something you haven't done before. I think that is the biggest impact you could have on the industry right now.
Yeah, I'll use the earned media for example. I think I was thinking about that actually when I brought this up. Was in the 4 years I've been doing this, I don't know how many conferences, 12 to 15 or so. Earned media has never been a topic. I've never sat in on an earned media discussion of here's how you can use earned media. Here's some best practices for earned media to get you what you need in your destination. I've never had that conversation with peers in the industry. But I know that half the things I've sit on are AI, and we should have those conversations. But it's also a little bit of a safe conversation to have because there's so many unknowns. So it's safe for them to say these things because it's like, well, this is developing.
Well,
But
it's
what we don't,
repetition as well. Like they're having
yeah,
the same AI conversations again and again for 3 years. That's the challenge. All right. Well, Kristen, if they want to find you, other than at an airport, where
yeah.
can they
And
do that?
other than christianmengel.com, do not Google that if you don't want trouble with your spouses at home. But you know what's funny is the first time you had me on, I thought about it afterwards, but you asked that question, and I said we're just north of Kansas City, like 45 minutes. That's where you can
You
find me.
thought I meant the destination. Yeah.
Exactly. So you can actually find me, yeah, on LinkedIn. Christian Mengel, it's just spelled slightly different. Mengel. Obviously, this lady's talking at the airport over, while I'm staying where I'm at. But find me at these conferences, or just
Yeah.
call me. I'll talk to you for the next 4 hours if you call me and ask about earned media and risk. And I'd love to. So just give me a call, find me at a conference, just ask for Christian Mengel. Somebody will be like, oh, that guy, he's got a dating website name. And they'll laugh about it, but we'll talk about it.
Thanks. Adam, what about you, sir? They want to
Well,
find you.
Stuart, I just
Or any
want to
final
tell you
thoughts?
before I say how to get a hold of me, I just wanted you to know I thought it was a really bold and courageous choice for you to wear that tie-dye blazer at Destinations International Marcom, and just kudos to you for taking that risk.
Are you trying to inception me right there?
I just I know that the audience received it really, really well. Everybody
Mm,
enjoyed it, and it might even
mm.
become a staple of the show. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I don't know that that happened, will happen, has happened. No.
You can find me, Adam at thebrandrevolt.com, on LinkedIn, or of course on Tourism IQ.
Well, you can find me at stuart.butler at visitmyrtlebeach.com or on LinkedIn. Please leave a review. Let us know if you like the show, if you don't. If you want to join this conversation, reach out to Adam or me, and we would love to engage you. We picked up a few guests recently who have just sent you an email, me an email, and said, hey, I agree or disagree on this topic that you talked about. And so we're inviting them to come on and expand that conversation. This show is for the destination. It's for you desties out there. We want to be, the tip of the spear in creating a new community within the destination marketing world where we're willing to have these scary, crazy conversations out loud. I think there's a void that we're trying to fill, and hopefully others will join us in this movement of the destination. So until next time, this has been Destination Discourse.
Thanks, everybody.